In today's video, we're going to talk about simple home concrete casting to make useful objects around the homestead. But I could be talking bollards. Hello, welcome to English Country Life. Welcome to the garden on a sunny spring day. My name's Hugh, and together with my gorgeous wife Fiona, we run a rural small holding here in Lincolnshire. And what I'm going to show you today is how to do small concrete casting jobs with no fancy tools, no concrete mixers, no fancy vibration tools. We're going to use stuff as sophisticated as buckets and wheelbarrows and washing up liquid and sticks. But this actually comes to a point that we've found as we've worked our way through trying to become more and more self-reliant. Yeah, of course, some jobs need professionals, they need fancy, expensive tools. But a lot of the time, if we're just a little bit brave, we find that we can get by doing smaller jobs ourselves. Yeah, we've got to do some research, we've got to figure out how to do it. Casting concrete is one of those things. Before we came here, we'd never done it. But you know what? A concrete bollard will cost me over 100 quid. The ones I'm going to make today, and they're hand portable so we can move them out of the way for mowing, cost less than a £5 each. We're saving a fortune, and we have to do that because we don't have pots and pots of cash. So what we're going to do is show you a simple way to cast concrete, but also encourage you with all these small jobs, do a bit of research and have a go yourself. Right, let's mix up some concrete. I use an old wheelbarrow for mixing concrete. I find it's perfect, it really helps with clean out. But you can just put a board on the floor and mix on that. Honestly, you don't need anything sophisticated. We need 3 ingredients. The first of those ingredients is what's called aggregate, which is sand, gravel, stones, that kind of material. You can use one or a mix of them. Because we want a smooth finish, I'm just using sharp sand. And we're going to use a ratio of 4 parts of sharp sand to 1 part of cement. And the aggregate, the sharp sand, is the solid part. The cement is, if you like, the glue that holds the concrete together, and we'll just add water to that to get it into a fluid consistency. Simplest way here is a complete bag of sharp sand, to which I will add a 1/4 bag of cement. As we said, we're not using anything sophisticated here, so I'm going to mix it with an old coal shovel. And before I add the cement, what I'm going to do is just sort of flatten out my sharp sand a little bit, and then I can pour a layer of cement on top of the sharp sand rather than kind of putting it all in one place. That just helps with the mix a little bit later on because we're going to mix it dry. This is the cement I'm using. It's a rapid setting cement. It should go off in about 8 to 12 hours, but I usually leave 2 or 3 days just to be safe. And what I'm going to do, this is a handy pack, so this is half the size of the bag of sharp sand, and I'm going to add half of this bag. So effectively, again, 4 parts sand, 1 part cement. I'm going to dry mix those ingredients, and I'll just do that with the coal shovel. What I'll do is I'll sort of dig up a spadeful or shovelful, turn it over, but then I also need to chop through because I want to mix at all the layers, not just on the surface or at the bottom, but sort of like interspersing those layers as well as I possibly can. And I think I know when I've got my mix right, almost based entirely on colour. Initially, you can still see the 2 colours, the grey of the cement and the orange of the sand as you turn it over. But after a period of turning, you can find they just become this sort of earth tone, and you're pretty certain at that point that you've got your mix about right. And I create a little bit of a well to start mixing in my water. Mixing in water, I'm going to be honest, I just do it by eye. There's no particular ratios involved in this. What I'm doing is adding the water a little bit at a time and then shoveling on the dry ingredients in order to absorb that water. And it is that sort of little and often thing because suddenly it starts to turn. And I'm going to show you at the end, when I've added a bit more water, what I'm looking for. You can see here that the concrete is still quite stiff. It's not flowing like water. But when I turn a shovelful of it over, it's quite smooth on the surface. And when it's too dry, it still looks kind of bitty and it's got lots of air gaps. And when it's like that, if you've got air gaps in your concrete, it doesn't have any structural integrity. You'll see later, we really work hard to get the air gaps out of concrete. And when you get that nice smooth look on the surface, that's about done. It's about ready then to pour into the moulds. For a few round bollards, I'm going to cast in plastic buckets, but you can make moulds out of anything. You can make them out of plywood, out of Conti board, anything you like that. Here's a top tip though. Your concrete's going to stick to your mould, and you need to create a barrier between the mould and the concrete. It's called mould release. I'm using something as sophisticated here as dish soap, as washing up liquid. And I'm going to take a bit of blue workshop cloth and just smear that all over the inside of the bucket to make sure there's no spot where the concrete can stay. You can use cooking oil, you can use almost anything that creates that temporary barrier between the mould and the concrete. But I find that clean up from washing up liquid is easy. Once I've done that, I'm not actually going to pour concrete, I'm going to shovel it in with my coal shovel. And what I'm trying to do is create a layer of concrete 2 or 3 inches thick, about 3 shovelfuls in this case, and I'm going to put that into the bottom of the mould, and then I'm going to try and make sure that I haven't got any of those air gaps again. So I'm chopping it in with my shovel, and that is to try and push out any areas where I've got a bit of an air gap between the layers, and then I'm going to tap the bucket. Use a rubber mallet, I'm using something just a stick, and what that does is encourage any air out to rise to the surface. And I'm going to build my concrete up in layers, chopping it through each time. So there's 3 more shovelfuls in here, and I'm going to go in with the shovel, and I'm not just sort of pressing it down, I'm chopping it down, trying to get out any gaps in the concrete, because that's what really messes it up. A, it looks awful, but B, air gaps have got no structural integrity, and your concrete will just crack and fall apart. So second layer in, chopped in with the shovel, and then I'm going to give it a really good bang with the stick. And you can actually see the concrete coming away from the side of the mould here as I do that. But because we've got the right consistency, you can see it levelling out at the top and it flows back into the sides, but we're sure there's no air gaps there. Here I am then, finally, that's about the level I want to go to. I'm not going to go right over the top of the bucket. So I'm tapping away. That's going to smooth it out, and I'm going to finish it off by hand in a minute. Only roughly, it's just a concrete bollard. I'm not trying to make some artwork here. But I will just give it a little bit of a smooth over with a flat tool, trowel in this case. You can use anything, it doesn't really matter. And as I say, you can actually skim it, make it beautiful, but this is ultimately a bollard. Now, before I finish, what I am going to do is put a handle in, and you can make a handle out of anything. I've got some little fitments here that came off a telegraph pole that I'm going to use as a handle on some of them, but an old bucket handle. I've made some really nice bollards in the past, and what we did was just get hold of some worn out horseshoes from an equestrian friend, and we pushed those down into the surface of the concrete. They looked nice. It was a reuse of a worn out object. And before we finish with the casting, let's clean up our barrel. I just wanted to show you this because people worry that it's going to ruin their barrel. Honestly, it doesn't. Just get in there with a hose, give it a really good, strong squirt, and all that concrete just washes off your barrow and pour it away. Be careful where you pour it away. Don't pour it on your plants, obviously, but just wash it off the inside, pour it away somewhere discreet, and your barrel will be just as good as new. Rapid setting cement goes off quite quickly, but I'm going to leave these 2 or 3 days to be sure they're dry. And at the end of that, I give the mould a little bit of a tap, and with any luck at all, I can just lift the bollard straight out. There we go, we can see it's come free, and there it is. Now, I'm not going to show you this, but wash it off to get the washing up liquid off it before you try and paint it, and prime it with polyurethane concrete primer. If you don't, your paint will dry okay, and it'll just peel straight off. It's clear stuff, but concrete isn't porous, and if you don't prime it with a proper concrete primer first, your paint won't stick. Once you've done that and it's dried, I'm just using some leftover Santex that we had here. Now, people will tell me that I should use proper concrete paint, but honestly I found so long as you prime properly, you can paint the concrete with a large number of things. It's, in my experience, the lack of priming that really does cause a problem when you're trying to paint on concrete. As I say, it's not porous and the paint doesn't stick in and it doesn't bond properly unless you put something between the concrete and the paint. So what I'm going to do, give all of these a couple of coats of masonry paint, and then we'll move on to the next step. And the next step is really a bit of a sort of safety thing for everyone concerned. What I've done is masked up this bottle. Obviously I've let the masonry paint dry first, and this is one of the bucket handled ones that I've done. And I'm giving the top and just a bit of the sides a light coat of some fluorescent red paint. It's not the same as the Santex, and I know I shouldn't mix my paint types, but let's be honest, when you're doing a job like this, you use what you've got to hand, and it works out absolutely fine, trust me. So a couple of light sprays of this, and what this is for is so that anybody driving by doesn't accidentally bump into them. And I think you can see, once it's finished, it makes the bollard a lot more visible. And I don't want someone accidentally banging the sort of wing of their tractor or hitting it with the bumper of their truck because they've come a little bit close. I want these things to be obvious to warn people that there's a soft verge here. So we keep them back from the edge so that, again, you know, somebody doesn't just overhang the edge of the verge a little bit and clip a trailer or something. But they're a visual warning not to pull up on that verge because you may well not get off again. That was it. I hope you can see there really isn't very much to casting small concrete shapes. Now, when you get beyond a certain size, you need to put some metal reinforcement in, some rebar or some weld mesh. And if anyone's got any interest, I'm really happy to show you how to do that as well. Honestly, it's not as hard as you may think. Now, if you're concreting an entire house foundations, or if you're putting in a driveway, yeah, of course, get a professional in. But to put in a ramp for your garden, you can honestly do it. You really, really can. It just needs a little bit of time, a little bit of patience. If you've enjoyed today's video, can you spare us 5 seconds? Give us a thumbs up down below. If you'd like to see more on sort of DIY, small, self-reliant projects, please leave us a comment down below. Tell us the kind of things that interest you, and we'll try and make those videos for you. If you'd like to see those videos and everything else we produce, click on subscribe down there, hit the bell next to it. It's a totally free service, but you'll hear every time we upload a new video. For today, enjoy the sunshine. Thanks for watching. Come back and see us soon. Take care.